Philadelphia, get ready to be inspired. If you need help finding the light in the darkness, don't touch that dial. Let's navigate life through the lens of hope with Scotty P. Inspirational speaker Scotty P speaks the importance of mental health in society and encourages techniques to overcome the everyday mental health obstacles that hold us back in life. It's not just inspiration, it's Scotty P inspiration.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Scotty P Inspiration Show, here with your host, none other than me, Scotty P, also known as Scott Prendergast. I really appreciate y'all joining me here today, and I hope that this message can be something that you can take, run with, and it can help you to navigate your life through the lens of hope, because that's what we're trying to do out here. So I appreciate you all for tuning in today. Thank you so much again. Now, you know that I like to keep things short and sweet and get right to the point, but before we do that, just a couple reminders. If you want to watch this show and see the video with it, you could go on YouTube and check out Scotty P Inspiration. You can watch it that way under the playlist Scotty P Inspiration Show, okay? Or if you just want to listen to it, go on any major podcast platform, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, you name it, and you will be able to listen to the podcast this way. All right, everybody? So what I want to do for today is I wrote something down yesterday on one of my walks, and I want to really share what I wrote. Okay, so I'll read some of it, we'll break it down, we'll analyze it, all that fun stuff like we're used to doing here. Without further ado, everybody, let's jump into it. What I was writing was all about the question that pops into our minds on such a regular occasion: is it good enough? Am I good enough? Are we good enough? Is it good enough? Will I be enough, right? These type of questions, oh my goodness, they are so intrusive, and I feel like they're so abundant. You know, we all go through our daily lives asking this question in different realms, multiple different times. Am I good enough for my boss? Am I good enough for my partner? Am I good enough for my, family? Am I good enough for my job? Am I good enough for what I want to do with this life, right? These questions are nonstop. And I really wanted to break this down and see how we can loosen the grip that this question, is it good enough? Am I good enough? Has on us and on our lives. And what I wrote down really started with this: whose definition of good enough are we placing our situation in the hands of? Who's holding this definition? Is it us? Is it a friend? Is it a boss? Is it society at large? Whose definition of good enough are we submitting ourselves to? And that's a really important question, because a lot of times we don't even know. We just always assume, nope, not enough, nope, not enough, nope, not enough. And we repeat this over and over and over again without ever really diving into it and saying, wait a minute, who's holding the standard here? And what I wrote after that is this: are comparison and envy the ones we are submitting our life and our works towards? If so, that will keep us in a forever repeating cycle, because what's viewed as good enough is constantly changing when it comes to everyone else. Now, here's a picture that I want you to think of. I'm thinking, when I wrote this, of comparison and envy as these two people, right? They're these two people that are standing like on top of a mountain. They're giants, and everybody is just feebly walking up to them, presenting what they have, saying, is this enough? Is this enough? And then comparison and envy look at each other, and they just laugh and they say, nope, try again. And they kick this person down the mountain, and then you have to come up with something new to try to submit to comparison and envy and see if they'll take it, right? I think I picture it this way because comparison and envy, although they're not actual people, they really control a lot of the things that we do in our lives. And I think comparison and envy can represent society as a whole. And it's important to understand, hey, am I doing something? Am I submitting myself because I'm comparing to this or that? Or am I doing something, asking myself if I'm enough because I envy someone who has this or has that? You see what I mean by this? You see where I'm going with it? So if we're allowing comparison and envy to be the ones that are setting the standard for is it good enough, we're always going to be on this vicious cycle. And if you don't like the mountain analogy, you could think of us just running on a hamster wheel over and over and over again, like one of those old cartoons, right? That's what it's like when we're submitting ourselves and everything to comparison and envy all the time. And I think that picture, it kind of helps me to understand where this is it good enough idea is coming from in my own life. So let me continue with what I wrote here. Okay. So we can understand that, and we understand that things are always changing. Another thing for you to take in mind, think about in a technology realm. right? In 1980, what was deemed as good enough has obviously changed to what is good enough in 2024. It's always changing. What's good enough is never the same. It never stays. You might say, well, you know what, Scott? Someone told me, my boss told me the other day that I was good enough and superior with this or that. Or, oh, this person or that person suggested I am good enough, Scott. Look at my life. Look at all the things that I have. That's great. But let me ask you this. Is that something that's going to stay permanently? Or, although you got a good enough adoration from somebody today, are you just going to have to prove yourself again tomorrow and the next day and the next day and the next day? It's always going to change. Just like technology was always changing from 1980 to now, what's viewed as good enough in your own life, whether by your own doing or somebody else's, is always going to be changing too. And the question then arises, well, how do we get off this cycle? How do we get out of here? And how do we defeat the hold that this "is it good enough" has on our lives? And what I wrote down was this. How do we resist the urge of submitting to what comparison and envy deem as good enough? It starts with looking at ourselves internally. And what I wrote down was as follows. What am I using as my measuring stick of success? Is that measuring stick of success words of praise from society and those that you deem as successful in life? Is that your measuring stick? Is your measuring stick promotion at work? Or is it among friends, adoration from people, influence over other people? Are these the things that you think are the measuring stick of success? Maybe it's financial abundance or stability, getting a new car, the newest model. Okay? I want you to ask yourself as the listener to this question, what is the thing that you view as the surefire mark that you are enough? What's your measuring stick of success that you're enough? And I want you to think about that. And you may not have the answer right away. That's okay. But I want you to ponder that. Because when you can find what that answer is, you can begin to, break it down and start to chip away at it so that way it doesn't have that power over you anymore. Okay, so for the listeners, ask yourself, what is that measuring stick that you're viewing as good enough right now? After you've identified that, and again, this doesn't have to be right now, but maybe later you identify it, here's going to be our next step. And what I wrote was this. We need to, and this is tough for society, humble ourselves. Oh, what? Humble ourselves, I know, right? Shocker. We've got to humble ourselves and realize that whatever it is that we said was our measuring stick for good enough, we have to recognize that we are wrong. Whew. We are wrong? Are you kidding me? I think that's the least fun thing for any human in this world to do, is to admit that they are wrong. But let me tell you why I said this. We need to recognize that none of the things that we ever are going to plug into that measuring stick of success are going to provide genuine fulfillment. None of them will. And this is interesting. Look what I wrote here. But rather, all of them provide an illusion of happiness based on what we think we need to justify our own existence. Okay? Now, what I wrote next was cool too. But in reality, these different things that we want so bad are a mirror of our own conformity to the expectations placed on ourselves by the fear of not fitting into the world's definition of good enough. Whoa. Yeah, when I wrote that too, I had to take a look in the mirror and I had to work through some things as well. I had to humble myself as well. And I think a dash of humility goes a long way in this society, right? But let's just break down a little bit more what I said here, especially the last part. These different things, whether it's financial stability, promotion at work, influence, adoration, whatever it is, they are an illusion of happiness. But in reality, they are a mirror of our own conformity to the expectations placed on ourselves by the fear of not fitting into the world's definition of good enough. There's a lot to untangle there, and I'll leave some of that for you to do on your own, because your answer is going to be different than mine, and your analysis of that is going to be different than mine, and that's what I want, so that you can make it more personal. But I will say this, when I'm looking at what I wrote here, I don't even know if there's much more I can explain about that. The very things that we think that we want so bad and they're going to make everything great is the exact same thing that's causing us so much anxiety with thinking, is it good enough? Okay, so what's the remedy? Well, here's what I wrote. And this, again, might not be a remedy, but this is what I felt was a good answer to that question, okay? We need to replace that measuring stick of success with a genuine fulfillment reader. And I want to paint a mental image here for you. So imagine the measuring stick of success. You're putting in the money, you're putting in the fame, you're putting in the different things that this world says is great, and they're just plastic and they melt up, right? They just disappear. So when we get rid of that measuring stick, we put in this genuine fulfillment reader, and this thing's made out of cast iron. Okay, and it doesn't take any BS. So we try to put like adoration from others in this cast iron fulfillment reader, it tosses it out. We try to put in promotion at work into this cast iron fulfillment reader, it tosses it out, right? It's strict and it doesn't take any garbage, right? So what we have to do is, let me see what I wrote here. We replace that measuring stick with a genuine fulfillment reader. And every time we plug something into that fulfillment reader, it tells us the truth. And it takes our blinders off and guides us towards pursuing only the purest and most genuine desires of our life. The genuine desires and pure passions that we have for different things, not based off of fame, money, success, yada, 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 are the only things that can be put in that genuine fulfillment reader that work. Those are the only things. And so we need to find out what that is for us because it's different for everybody. And I think that image is pretty powerful. And you may have to go through that process that takes a few weeks, few months, maybe in a few years of plugging in different things and the fulfillment readers tossing them out left and right. But one day, when you finally get to a point where you're tired of that hamster wheel and that cycle, you plug in a pure intention or you plug in a genuine desire, and all of a sudden something clicks and you feel that grip that "am I good enough" has on you start to melt away. And that, I think, right there is the first step towards really being free from that whole "is it enough, am I enough?" And that's a powerful thing. Now, the last part that I wrote that I'll share with you, and then we'll have a little analysis possibly at the end, is this. Maybe doing this, putting that fulfillment reader in you and going through the process, maybe doing this doesn't lead to a new promotion at work. It doesn't eventually lead to a 500-foot yacht or blowing up on TikTok, but it will allow you to experience peace and true fulfillment, knowing that when you put your head on the pillow to sleep at night, you're putting out into the world something that can't be tainted or changed by the ever-changing standard of "okay, am I good enough?" that society has placed on everyone else. And that's for you to discover and find out. Now, I'm not here to tell you what that should be. I have my own thoughts on that. Me being a Christian, I think, I could talk about pretty extensively what I think the true peace is. Okay, and for me, I believe that comes from Jesus. And again, from you, that's for you to dive deeper in to figure out. Okay, but with everything that I just said here, it all begins with going back to what I said about asking ourselves, who are we submitting our standard of "is it good enough" to? Is it comparison? Is it envy? Whatever it is, find out what that is so you could get on the path to freeing yourself from that constant badgering of "am I enough? Is this enough? Will I ever be enough?" And that's something for you to ponder today. So I want to thank you all so much for joining me today on this episode of the Scotty P Inspiration Show. I hope you could take this message and run with it and apply it to your own life right here, right now. I really, really hope that you can. And I appreciate you all for tuning in, listening, watching, whatever it is. Share this with your friends. Do whatever it is that you got to do. But I really appreciate it. So until next time, this is Scotty P, signing off.